Welcome back, Matt. You got you're sporting the glasses here this morning?
Glasses. My eyes are starting to fail me, buddy. I needed some assistance this morning.
Well, good. Well, it's a Saturday morning session. I've got my coffee from Cafe Don Juan downstairs, so I'll enjoy that while we chat. Yeah.
Yes.
So last week, the Mexican made his debut on the channel. How was that
Thanks
received?
for that. All the comments that I have received, either from text message or people saying something in LinkedIn or on YouTube or whatever, have been very positive and humorous. Thank God, because you never know how it's going to land with that guy.
No,
you got to like hold your breath and wait for the dust to settle.
Yes. Well, we're here on a Saturday, and he's out on a boat.
Let's go. I'm on a boat. I'm on a boat. Everybody look at me because I'm sailing on a boat.
I half expect him to like jump around the corner behind you while we're going.
Matt, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is, obviously Nick and I do a lot of chatting about consumer sentiment. We talk about interest rates. We talk about the greater economy. Obviously that impacts deals and so on and so forth, but it acutely impacts the area in which you're operating in, which is sales marketing and, what consumers are willing to spend money on. And so I thought today would be a good day to not focus on the types of things that I would typically have to say, but I want to pull you a little bit on what you're seeing out there in the market.
So if you kind of, we can use lawn care. We can use a lot of the home services actually for reference. But if you pull it back to conversations that we were having maybe in like 2021, right? When all of these services were booming with demand, right? People were stuck at home. They were noticing absolutely everything that was going on poorly in their house. And even when the world kind of opened its doors up, people were slowly getting back into the rhythms of their life, right? Nobody was in a hurry. Businesses were trying to figure out, do we have an office anymore? People working remote, all that kind of stuff, right? So even when we could return to normal, everybody kind of took their time, and people still take the time. My company still takes its time, right? And so during that time, we saw this incredible boom. And I remember having conversations with you and other business owners in this time, encouraging them to not make expectations on the next year based upon this boom, right?
Yep.
I remember talking to so many people about that. Everybody's like, yeah, this isn't normal. But as soon as the next year's numbers started rolling in and it was less than the previous year, because the demand from the pandemic shrunk, people started to get a little nervous, right? But then you factor in on top of that, people exit back out of the pandemic and they go back into normal day-to-day life. But then what starts to happen to our economy, right? Without any attempt to make any of it political, right? I know as a business owner, and sole income provider for the home, that we make different buying decisions when it's $5 a gallon. It's like four and some change actually for us now. 4 and some change per gallon of gas, and every time we're hitting up the grocery store, which is with 3 teenagers, it's once a week. At least minimum once a week. It's probably twice a week in a lot of cases, but it's a $250 trip each time you go, right? You're burning through cash. My kids are growing out of their clothes. They need more things, need expensive things. Elle to get in a car next year.
Unbelievable.
No, you remember back in the day, Elliot was a little guy on our commercials. Well, he's taller than me now.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, for the first time this summer, doing college tours, Paul. For places that he might be interested to go to pursue whatever, which is nuts. Anyway, we exit back out into the world, and the economy starts to take like a big shit. And it's the economy that we're living in right now. The dollar is very thin. You cannot stretch this thing out very far these days at all. And so that's one of the biggest factors that impact consumer spending. It's kind of the bedrock of a lot of the things that we'll talk about today. The economic conditions that we're living in right now, post-pandemic, while things are back to normal, are bad. And it is impacting how frivolous people will be with their spends of their dollars that they see as discretionary spending.
Yep.
It impacts their discretionary spending in a big way.
I know a few sessions ago we talked about the fact that we've effectively come out of the COVID boom. Things are slowing down. And some of the things that I hear, I was on the road last week. I had a variety of different meetings with our sell side clients and acquirers. We brought in private equity firms, we brought in strategic acquirers. And some of the comments that I heard around the table, particularly from the private equity guys, on the pest control side is, you've got a lot of these companies that have exhibited somewhat of a hockey stick style growth, right? Like, so if you look back 8 or 9 years, they're growing, and then all of a sudden COVID comes along and things really accelerate. And it's natural for us to extrapolate and project that sort of stuff out into the future, but we know that things will begin to revert, and we've seen that happen. And so if you look at the publicly traded companies in pest control, for example, we've already seen a lot of softening demand, right? So things are slowing down.
Oh yeah.
And so, the private equity firms look at our projections and they say, hey, listen, guys, you can't project the same sort of results out in perpetuity. And, a lot of our clients look at it and say, well, that's certainly going to happen. But I will tell you, everyone that I am talking to out in the field now is, things are slowing down, particularly on the residential side. So we are starting to see that, and we are starting to see consumers, like you said, you've got, it's $6 for a dozen of eggs or whatever. I mean, people have to make some choices, and residential services sometimes, particularly the ones that aren't absolutely necessary, get traded off in exchange for things like food, right? That you need to have.
Yeah. Like real talk. If the economic condition is the first factor and it's kind of the bedrock that we're going to build on in this conversation, economic factor has a direct impact on disposable income, right? How much do we have and how much are we willing to spend, right? And where are we going to leverage the resources that we do have to impact my family in a positive way? So I'll give you a real solid example from the Rogers household, right? I mean, I come from a pest control company, business.
Yep. Well, and we heard about it last week. Your daddy owned a pest control company. Now you're pretending to be a marketing guru, right? Yes.
I'm pretending to be a marketing guru right now. It's true.
Right.
Imposter syndrome, 100%. I would just prefer to cut a check and have somebody come and take care of this stuff for us. But when we're talking, $1,000 for pest and termite on a home with a license that I have access to and application, I used to train our staff on RT and proper PPE, all that stuff. Like I can do that stuff with my eyes closed. So I'm just like, no, I'll go get the stuff and I'll do it myself. We'll save that $1,000 because L is trying to get a new phone, and his club soccer was $2,500. And groceries are breaking the bank, right? We're putting shit on credit cards all of a sudden, right? So that's like the next step in, right? Your economic impact affects the consumer's disposable income. And so they start to negotiate, what is a necessity for my house actually right now? What can I do without? How long can I be comfortable or go in between when I absolutely 100% have to fix this problem, right? That's true for HVAC, it's true for plumbing. Plumbing and electric are a little bit different in so much that the demand is immediate, right? And there's no subscriptions on top of that. But any of our services that we work with, the businesses that we work with that use a subscription kind of model and platform, they're going to start to see people like pull back. I've seen it with some of our partners, but I'd be curious to see what their attrition numbers look like this year versus last year versus the year before, right? So they can study that trend a little bit more. And the only pushback I have actually on what you said is, I don't know, I still can't tell on the front end of digital marketing if things are slowing down or they're just going back to normal, right? Before that crazy hockey stick spike up of growth, right? I think things are just kind of leveling back off and the ship is not rocking as much as it used to.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's certainly slowing down from the peak, right? So we're seeing that. Where it kind of ends up is anyone's guess at this point. I think one of the things that I look at, particularly in my business, is I mean, the U.S. government is involved or engaging in what we would call financial repression now, and effectively, what that means is putting everything on their, I mean, the government's putting everything on a credit card, right? I mean, they're just blowing a ton of cash, and they're attempting to effectively liquidate the debt by printing money, right? So I think we're going to see inflation be very, very sticky here going forward. As we know, in the last few weeks, the Federal Reserve cut rates on the front end of the curve, which is particularly interesting to me because, you know, the equity markets are really still somewhat at an all-time high now.
Really?
Yeah, it's very, I mean, if you think about where the equity markets are, I mean, you know, the S&P just hit another all-time high a couple of days ago. And so we're in an environment now where we've got financial assets elevated in value. We've got the Federal Reserve cutting rates at the front end of the curve. I don't think that this is going to bode particularly well for inflation going forward. And so I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on consumers.
It's like a recipe for disaster.
It is. But we've come to the point, you know, there comes a point when the debt is just not sustainable. And so the only thing that they can do is attempt to lower borrowing costs in order to just continue to make debt service. And I think we're very closely coming to the point where, and I don't want to get too economic technical on this show, but I think they're going to literally have to go out and do what's called yield curve control, which is what the Japanese have engaged in for decades, which is go out and basically wholesale buy U.S. government debt. The U.S. government creates debt, the Federal Reserve buys that debt, turns that debt into cash, injects it into the economy. We'll continue to see this, which I think is going to have it's going to put a lot of upward pressure on prices. And I think that's where the typical U.S. consumer is getting squeezed because we're starting to see a slowdown in wage growth, right? So wage growth is not where we're seeing it. We're seeing a lot of the upward pricing on services. We're seeing it in consumer products. We're seeing it in metals and material. If you look at lumber, you look at metals. I mean, gold's at, I don't know, last time I looked, $2,600 an ounce or so. A couple of years ago, before COVID, it was $1,200-1,300 an ounce. So we're starting to see that sort of stuff accelerate, which is going to further tighten belts, I believe.
Yeah. So one of the things you said is really interesting to me as a business owner, right? I've got staff and employees that are facing the same economic pressures that all of us are facing, right? And are needing to increase their salaries and wages to offset. Simultaneously, from an external perspective, our clients are spending less in digital marketing as they have to offset the economic conditions inside of their companies as well, right? Yep. In a lot of respects, it feels like a noose that's getting tight. And I know that this maybe seems like a downer episode because we're building a really shitty cake here, but we've got economic conditions on the base, on the bottom. That's the first factor. Yep. The second one is our disposable income. But then the third one is really interesting, and it's consumer confidence, right? It's our feeling of confidence in our ability to spend. I'm a natural risk taker, right? Mm-hmm. Katie is averse to taking risks, right? Mm-hmm. When I have a lot of consumer confidence, I'm willing to make large investments like this. You know, before our summer started, we had to replace our pool lining for our in-ground pool. That joker was $8,000. I could have shit a chicken when he gave me that quote. I was like, come on, man, are you kidding me? Anyway, at the time, I had a lot of consumer confidence. It's like, you know what, just do it. The kids will enjoy it all summer, and we obviously can't go anywhere. So we're not going anywhere this summer, guys, because I'm blowing $8,000 on your pool. But at the time, I had a lot of consumer confidence, so I would make a spend like that. Right now, especially for most of the companies that we work for going into a leaner season, right? Yep. I'm way less confident and therefore way less likely to make bigger ticket items, right? Roofing companies are going to experience the same kind of pinch in a time like this, right? Because people are not going to cut a check for $10,000, $15,000 to replace something on their roof when they don't have a lot of confidence in what's going on in the economy, right? You brought it up though. Actually, you kind of landed the next one pretty perfectly in terms of interest rates. You know, Katie and I we're actually refinancing right now because the rates dropped, and that will help, right? That is one of the factors that impact consumer spending in a positive way, right? When you can refinance and you get that lower percentage, and you can use some of the equity that you have inside of your home, you know, we can say things like, hey, you know, sub pump out by the garage has not been working. Let's get somebody out here to fix that now, right?
Right.
Or the thermostats, the Nest thermostats. Man, our Nest thermostats are like possessed by the devil, I think. Any HVAC company, call me. You got my business.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of the night, our HVAC drops down to like 60 degrees or something like that every night, all over the house. We can't figure out why. But I'm like, hey, we've got a little cash in the pocket right now. Our interest rate just dropped a little bit. We're able to do this refi. Let's use some of that and fix that. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the fourth kind of factor on our really shitty cake. It's not a shitty cake. It's just it is what it is. It's a data cake is what I'm going to call it now. But that's number 4, the interest rates.
Okay, Matt. So we've talked about some broader economic terms here. Let's get a little bit more granular. Let's talk about how business owners out there can actually capitalize on what's going on.
Oh yeah. So the 5th layer to our 8-layer data cake that we're making here
The shitty
is
cake?
social and cultural. Yeah, not a shitty cake. Some of it's shitty sometimes. It's social and cultural trends, right? There's shifts in social attitudes and cultural trends that can influence a consumer's preferences and their spending habits. The example that I wrote down for us for today is that there's a huge rise, a huge influx in eco-friendly lifestyles right now. That's a lot of the businesses that I work with are either trying to take advantage of or trying to adjust their operational offerings to the consumer to take advantage of that, right? The increase of demand for services like organic lawn care, green services, non-toxic pest control. Companies that align with these values can capture a market share that their competitors aren't taking advantage of. Some people, I know that in particular for pest control, people are hesitant to use the word organic pest control because even stuff like diatomaceous earth is not necessarily organic, right?
Right.
Or the application of it is necessarily organic. But some of the ways that we kind of dealt with that at Killingsworth specifically was we talked to our customers about how we apply these products to their home and how that is economically advantageous to them and their family, their dogs, all this kind of stuff. For example, it was kind of a people get really dumbfounded when I give out this figure, but our average visit to a home was 1.2 times per year, right? A lot of these people, I talked to one company that's coming on board with us that goes out 8 times a year, right? Yeah. Dad would shit a chicken. The homeowner would be like, I'm not getting bang for my buck. And our response was, well, listen, we like to take as organic approach to protect your home and your pets as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. And so we are going to spend about an hour and a half. We're going to take care of fill all your voids, and we're going to seal everything up. And we're going to do a very thorough treatment for an hour and a half, quarter-mile acre barrier all the way around your proximity. We're going to, apply caulk and all this kind of stuff, right? And we will come out as many times as you need if you see a sign of a live infestation. Yeah. But if you are not dealing with live infestation, then you don't need us because the bugs are dead. Just sweep them up and throw them away, right? And it worked like a charm when our operations adjusted into that message. Our profit margin shot up because we were only going out to all 34,000 of our homes on an average of 1.2 times a year, which was nuts.
I got to wonder about, from my perspective, there's a lot of companies out there that try to do organic treatments and this is natural. And, I think there are homeowners that like that sort of stuff, but I think there's a, whether right or wrong, and I don't know enough about it, there's this kind of a stigma out there in the market that, if it's not the real deal, like if it's organic, if it's natural, it's not going to work. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so I know from history, and this might be changing, but for the last 20 years, like on the lawn care side and on the pest control side, a lot of these companies that focus purely on like organics, naturals, no synthetic products, so on and so forth, you get a certain customer base, particularly wealthier areas, right? Yeah. That can afford to spend extra money, can afford the extra treatments, so on and so forth. They're into it, but it's broadly difficult to sell. And over the years, I've asked big companies. I mean, I remember asking the president of Rollins, of Orkin, why don't you guys, this was years ago, by the way, why don't you guys have like a natural, or organic division where you're not, everything that you're doing is a natural organic. It's not, no synthetics, this, that, or the other. And he's like, we'd love to be able to do that, but customers just won't buy it. They just don't want to, like, we can only sell what customers actually want to buy. And there's a small amount of people that actually want to do it. And it's not worth it for us to invest time, money, and effort into that. I'm wondering how much that's changing now.
I think, well, the demand has changed specifically, but even in reference to what I was talking about, most of the products that we were putting out, you would not consider organic.
Correct.
The way that we kind of adjusted our language, our scripts from our inside salespeople to our new clients, existing clients, all that, right, is to say that our process of application we consider organic, right? And this is why, right? And then you kind of walk them through that, right? And so that's what allowed us to kind of build that margin. But I would say, honestly, experimenting for companies that are interested in taking advantage of this particular rise in demand, which we see it in the keywords, in the tea leaves of Google. The demand is there, it's present, right? Businesses that are going to be pursuing and investigating how they can package these offerings and communicate that to people as an option of their other options that they have is going to 100% give them an advantage over their competitors whom are not considering it, right?
Yeah, interesting.
Well, another like big impact is seasonality, right? Where you and I are not next week, but the following week we're going to be in Denver for Pest World, right? And then just after that, we're going to be in Charlotte.
Damn it!
I got
to book my tickets for that.
You got to buy tickets, man. Don't leave me out here by myself, Paul.
I got to do that.
Just call Jess. Be like, Jess, help me out. But seasonality is waning, right, for both of those industries, for the pest control industry, for the lawn care industry. It's picking up for industries like HVAC, right? We're going into the colder months. You got to wear a jacket to go outside now, right? It's never really for plumbing, for electrical services like that. It's always based on demand. There's not really a season, but seasonality really does have impact, and people have to be thinking about the bell curve of their company. My least effective clients that I work with are clients that we can't convince to adjust their digital marketing spend to match the bell curve of their company. They're still cutting a clean, even check of X to their digital marketing company every month. So their bell curve for digital marketing is like flat, right? But what they see is their dollar doesn't go as far in the off season, and they could have used that money in high season when demand was high. So you have to pivot your strategies when you know that you are facing a off season, right? Yeah. Because there are still people that are looking for your services. You've just got to figure out how to get to them. There's a smaller number of people that are looking for your services, but you've got to figure out how to get to them.
Yeah.
And then the next one to kind of piggyback on that, number 7 was advertising and marketing influence. The off season is a great time to focus on branded messages, particularly, right? People don't think about this a lot, but we talk about it a lot. In fact, I'd love to do an episode with you that talked about, media buying and mixing your channels and creating amazing content that can go in Meta and on Hulu and Amazon Prime and all this kind of stuff to start to brand your company out there, particularly in the off season.
Yeah.
And the reason that you do this is because you start to, like a boar, you just start to dig down into the psyche of the consumer with hopefully compelling brand messages, right? So that when the seasonality adjusts and rises back into the other direction, the consumer's like, oh yeah, I remember that commercial that I saw like 18 times in the month of November.
Yep.
I'm gonna look them up and give them a shot, right? An example, I put pest control service can boost consumer spend with limited time promotions in times like this, right? If you're getting your branded message out there, and especially right now in the off season for pest control, and you say we've got a winter special we're putting out there right now, deep discount on our annual contract, right? Yeah. You'll find people like my wife are like, yeah, sign me up. I want some of that. But me, I'm like, no, it's the middle of the year, right?
Yeah.
Who do I cut this check to for somebody to come get these spiders, and we live in the woods. We got German roaches everywhere. Who's going to come get these, right? My wife is like, no, we'll wait for a deal, right? This is the time to find those deal shoppers. But then the very last one, and I think that this has bigger implications for a lot of the companies that we work with, because I don't know what it's like for you from an M&A side in terms of what you see for market density. But I'll give you, for instance, we were at AZPPO in Arizona this past year together. And my friends over there, Tracy Gilmer, she told me that there were 1,200 pest control companies within a geographic region of this particular conference, right? 1,200, right? When you've got market density that thick, right? What you have to understand is happening in the mind of the market and in the collective mind of the market and in the mind of the consumer is all of your competitors are shifting into the place where they're starting to lower their prices to beat their competitor. And what happens is you get this really weird race to the bottom. We never did shit like that in Charlotte. And, Charlotte was I think it still is one of the faster growing markets in the United States for new pop-up pest control companies. We were always proud to say we are going to be the most expensive, the most thorough, the best customer service you're ever going to experience is right here. And Dad never really shifted on that, right? Yeah. And so that's one way you can offset market density. Be confident in your price, and from an operational perspective, get really solid at what your team is able to produce in terms of the experience to the consumer, so that consumer will cut that big check even in a difficult economic time, because they don't want to lose this relationship that they found is vital and takes a lot of burden off of their shoulders, so they can focus and worry about other things,
Yeah. No, I mean, we definitely see the phenomenon that you're talking about, the race to the bottom. It's like, when financial sponsors or private equity firms talk about getting into pest control, they instantly look in markets like Georgia and Florida and South Carolina, Alabama. They say, well, that's where all the bugs are, right? We want to be in the Southeast. Yeah. And the problem with that is that's also where all the competitors are as well. So when you take a business that's in the Midwest, for example, like in Wisconsin or Minnesota, one of these kind of greater Midwestern states, or even up in New England and Maine, you have way less bugs, no doubt. You have shorter seasons, but you also have far less competitors. So the price that you can get is much, much higher. And there's also natural barriers to entry. Mother Nature is a great barrier to entry. It's harder to compete up in those markets just due to seasonality. And so
true.
I've always said on the Buzz that if I were to start like a pest control business or a lawn care business or one of these sorts of businesses that's focused on resi services, I would look to the colder climate before I would go to the southern climates, because that's where the competitors are. And what do we see in the data? Well, we see in Wisconsin, guys are charging $150 a quarter for services, and in Atlanta Metro, they're charging $70. Huge delta, right? Like there's a very big price difference there. And their costs are largely the same. Sure, they might have a little bit lower wages down there, but they pay the same for gas, they pay the same for vehicles, they pay the same for count, they pay the same for all of those other things. So margins are thinner. And I see that across the board. So I always tell folks, like when you're thinking about setting up an integrated home services business, really think about, if you have the luxury of starting something, not necessarily just in your hometown, if you could, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to start one of these and you can start it anywhere, think about the dynamics in the market. Think about like the fact that Charlotte is a net importer of people versus Syracuse, New York, for example.
Yeah, a net exporter of people.
An exporter of people. Look at how many competitors are there in your space. Look at what they're doing online. Look at what they're bidding for keywords. Look at what their pricing is. Secret shop these guys. Figure out pricing. So there's a lot of research that you could do to kind of get yourself before. Yeah. Yes, before.
Yeah. So true.
I already got a business. It's kind of too late for that. But like for those of you who are considering, yes, before.
Yeah, do your research. I think to kind of put a bow on it from my perspective is, my encouragement for everybody that's listening to this content that's hopefully useful to you. understanding what's going on in these spaces shouldn't like lock you up in fear that things are starting to crash and the walls are closing in and all this kind of stuff. It's if you adjust your strategies for how you're communicating, what you're communicating, where you're communicating to reach into the market and talk to these new people, what you'll find is that people will still continue to come towards your business and your business can still continue to grow.
Yeah.
The actual inaction in a low economic time is actually going to bring the walls in closer to you very quickly, right? You'll feel all of the weight of the economy around you crashing, from gas prices to salaries and wages and all that kind of stuff, chemical costs going up, all that, right? Simultaneously, your business won't be going. So keep the pedal down and just know that, especially for a lot of the businesses that we work for, these are resilient businesses, right? They're going to endure this time and they're going to be here when times get better too. And so that would be my encouragement to the people that are hanging out with us.
Awesome. Well, great show today, Matt. I appreciate you joining me here on this morning.